So thanks so much for being here, and I definitely will share my whole life. I have to go here? Oh, come on, because I love it there. I love it there. Okay, I will talk about sustainability. Without leadership, there is no sustainability, and it's really something that I have been diving into in this year because I felt like, I don't know how you feel, but I feel the whole world is shivering, the whole world is changing, and I felt like really, what is it? And I will take you on a journey because I will really dive into sustainability and the connection of sustainability and health and leadership. So really, I will finally dive into what we can learn from the wisdom of nature. So if you have 3.8 billion years of nature, and if you listen to that kind of wisdom, I think we are saved in this world. We just lost the track to that kind of wisdom. And that's what I try to dive in. So these are my two topics. I will dive with you into the past. So what's happening, where we are coming from, where we are now, and then I dive with you into the future, where we should go if we're listening to the wisdom of nature. So this is what I really love to do with you, and let me take you on this journey. I hope you get as excited as I am, because I am excited about that. Do you understand that? Is it translation working? Great, fantastic. So let's start with that. I promised you going back, Trisha, I promised you going back in 100,000 years. So we are here 100,000 years back. So what happened to 100,000 years back? 100,000 years back, we were born somewhere at the Lake of Victoria, somewhere in the middle of Africa. From there, we were wandering into the world. And when we were wandering into the world, we were like this. We were like really peacefully. There were small little tribes, like 20, 30 people going around around the world and really trying to get into the feeling. So they were supporting each other. We had equal rights, human and like female and male. So that was a really good, interesting time. Of course, there were fights. There were some fights, but basically we were really, really, really small little groups. And the interesting thing is, at that time, we sometimes should remember us to that time. At that time, we were guardians of the world. We were people that care for the world. We were something that we miss maybe today. I've seen that today. Martha, in your session, I saw that guardians. I saw 3 guardians of the world. So I love that if I feel the passion of guardians of the world. So this is the time. But then something happened 10,000 years ago. Do you have any feeling what happened 10,000 years ago? Any idea in the room? What happened 10,000 years ago? We settled down. We settled down, we did agriculture, we settled down, and when we settled down, we had something to fight for, you know. We were settled down, we had agriculture, we had to defend, we were creating weapons. So this is what happened 10,000 years ago. And we had some more of that shocks in our world. Like, for example, you might remember the Middle Age, when there was another ice age in the Middle times in the Middle Age, and then the church was blaming the people that are connected to nature, like the witches and all those, to blame them that they are playing with the devil. Okay, so that was a time where we were disconnected the second time. So there is a lot of separation happening, and we are now in that times where we have that separation. We have the separation between nature and us. We have the separation, I don't know if you sometimes feel it, between female qualities and male qualities. I'm very honest with myself. When I was born as a male, I had my problems to be a male because I think, to be honest, males sometimes fuck up this world. Sorry to say that. Really, we did a bad thing to the world. So you're agreeing on that, okay? So, but I feel like we can do better, we male, and so there is a separation between male and woman. There is a separation between our hearts and our brains. So that's the next separation. And if you go into neuropsychology, there is a separation between the left and the right brain, okay? The left brain is more about like logic, and the right brain is more about that we are all together, okay? So if you have a stroke and you have something happening that these are not connected, you feel one. You feel like we are all one. I can dive into you and we are all one. So this is like the separation I'm talking about. So if I'm talking about leadership, I'm talking about the connection between the inner and the outer. I'm talking about the connection of the heart and the mind, the male and the female, as well as the humankind and nature. This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about leadership, okay? So that was going back into the times. We had all that. We had all that we wanted to connect to now. We had it in the past, okay? So where we are now, we are unfortunately now in a time where we experience climate change, where we experience something very urgent for us. So the tourism reality is about climate adaptation. If you manage a harbor, you have to manage climate adaptation. If you are close to the sea, you have to manage climate adaptation, okay? That's all what you have to manage. So it's mandatory, okay? And it's interesting because the whole tourism development, I was talking with some people in this room, I don't blame anyone here, talking about the cruise ship industry or the aviation industry or even the hotel industry. We are far away from that net zero track. In the hotel industry, we are closer, well, at least we are growing, we are growing in numbers, but we are far away from that net zero track. So this is the reality that we are in. We are far away from the climate neutral track, okay? And if you ask me, climate change in the outer sphere is depression rate in the inner sphere. I don't know how you feel at work. I feel the burden of the dynamics of this time, and you feel you have to really get that in. You have to understand that this time is very transformational. And sometimes I feel that leaders in this world are managing more crises than they are managing people, okay? So the inner and the outer landscapes are totally under pressure and overheated. And I will dive with you into that in a moment. So to really put it on the track, this is a reality. Like 13% of all diseases worldwide, the World Health Organization is saying that, predicts that depression is the biggest issue for our times, okay? So depression rates are, the burnout rates, depression rates are really increasing. And that's something that really, well, that makes something with me. I mean, we have this climate change, we have the depression inside. So this is a world we live in, okay? And Tricia, I talked with you about the offline experience. So I often like to do experiments. So this was an experiment I did like 2 months ago. I went with 25 people into a village somewhere in Austria, in the middle of nowhere. I went there, and when I entered the village, I gave away my phone, I gave away my computers, and all the people in the village did the same. It was a touristic experiment. So all the people in that village did the same. And what happened, I have to say, is, and the first day I was looking, and the keys of the hotel were exactly like the shape of the iPhone, and I said, where is it, where is it? So I was looking for that, and finally I really dived into that moment, and it was so interesting because with all the people, we became naked, not really naked in the real sense, but we became naked with all our fears, all our feelings about this world, and it was very nice to connect to everyone. So I can recommend you to do that for some time. Get out of this whole thing with this social media and all that. So if you do that, you connect you to your true self, and that's something I experience very much. Just one thing I experienced there. I was taught by the world record holder to go into a very cold lake. It was 3-degree lake, and I was going inside that, and I trained to breathe in a different way. I was trained that my cells cannot make a difference between hot or cold. So you cannot. If you go slowly in, you cannot make that. So after half an hour, I was swimming in this 3-degree cold water, and I felt like being in a thermal bath. You cannot imagine that, but so please do that. It was a very interesting experience. So my mind plays a lot of tricks to me, and we can play these tricks back to really get the hold of our lives again. So that was an interesting experience, and I come back to that because every evening we were sitting at this campfire here, and we were listening to researchers about what does digitalization do to us. So I was very much listening to that. Okay, and I bring you some of this in the next slides as well. So what is happening right now is, and this is very much related to our topic, it's very much related to sustainability. we have stressors normally being singular, temporarily physical. That was a stressor that stressed us in the former times. You have any ideas what I'm talking about? What are the stressors of the old times that were singular? Any idea? Come on, it's after lunch. For example, hunger, okay? Hunger, cold, hot. Yeah, these were stressors that are really singular, temporary, and physical. All the stressors right now about digitalization are multifactorial, are temporarily unlimited, and are psychological. So this is changing. This is changing everything that we are doing, okay? So if you are thinking about that, our immune system, I'm a biologist, I studied immunology, so I was diving into that in my studies. I'm not doing it anymore, but if you sense that our brain uses 30, 40, 50%, 40% of our capacities, and our immune system also uses 40% of our capacities, okay, our energy capacities. So then you can sense the challenge of this century. The challenge of this century is, where do we get the energy from, okay? Because if these two are competing in energy, where do we get the energy from? And what happens in our body is, you might have heard about something that is called leaky gut syndrome. So that's in your stomach. It breaks up and it says, we need energy. But that's our first defense line, okay? So this is where we get ill, okay? And that's why illness is getting up with this high digitalization issues and all that. So this is quite interesting. So the other question is also quite interesting. If we are getting ill, how do we get healthy, okay? And every research we do normally is about how do we get ill. 99% of all the money in research is researching how do we get ill. We call that in Germany, we call it Krankenhäuser, which is illness houses. Hospitals are illness houses. They are not healthy houses. So what gets us healthy? And this is about the salutogenesis. It's the opposite of the pathogenesis. So it's by Aaron Antonovsky. He did this research as what makes us healthy? And what makes us healthy is basically these things. If we understand the world, if we are convinced that we can shape our lives, and if you feel important by doing that. Can I have some hands? Who feels important in your job and you understand the world? Oh, that's good. That's good. You know, that's also, oh, I like that. Very nice. So at least 1/3 in the room. That's good. What about the rest? Okay. All the studies show 13% of all people are happy with their job. 56% of all young people in the world say we are doomed. This world is over. So I'm coming back to that in the end of my presentation because that's really something that burdens me, that really is on my shoulders. So how do we get healthy? We get healthy by this, okay? There are some other things which I really like to dive into very shortly. There are also a lot of scientific results. If you connect yourself with a purpose in life, with something that really talks to you, okay, you are more healthy, you have less coincidences with heart strokes, with you live longer, you have more healthy style, you're better financially off. So that's another reason why you should dive into purpose and life, why you should be happy in what you're doing, okay? So the next topic, what of the studies, at least what I see, is tourism is running out of human resources. And something is wrong with the way we do tourism. Something is really fundamentally wrong. And I listened to one guy in Germany, it was very interesting, Bodo Jansen, you might know him, Dagmar. That's a very interesting topic of a guy who runs a big hotel chain. And he did a research about how satisfied are my employees in my company. And it was a really disaster. It was really, everyone said, well, the leaders are bad, I feel unsatisfied, it's really bad. So what this guy said is, I can either hide this study somewhere in my desk, or I can publish it and learn how it works. So he published it publicly. And then he went to a monastery for 1.5 years and learned about leadership. Meanwhile, this company is running all the educational work. So half of the, if you if they have like trainings in this hotel chain, they invite half of the people from outside and half of the people from inside. And they teach people how to empower people to connect the purpose of life to the purpose of the company. Okay, so that's very interesting. And it's really open up a lot of things. So he says entrepreneurs who lack employees might not have to offer a lot on the human level. And I think that's true. So we should think about that. And the next topic is, I think I should not mention it in this room. I think we are here together in that sense. We have created a model that is really on exploitation and competition and not on common goods and co-creation. Dagmar, you were talking about co-creation in your session. I think this is really important. So, and the interesting thing is, there is a study about 100,000 small little companies, and these 100,000 companies, there is a clear correlation between financial indicators and satisfaction. So even if that is the case, we have this, okay? So there is something wrong in the things we are doing. And the fifth point I want to mention on the status quo is everything is changing. Like even the laws are changing. You listen to the fact that we have a Green Deal now, the next is a Blue Deal. So the whole EU is changing the legislative framework. So you might have heard about this CSRD, Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. It's the first time that the European Union, and Marta, we talked about that on the plane, it's the first time that the European Union puts financial indicators and sustainability indicators on the same page. In Germany, they even play with the idea of changing the accounting rules, and I will come to that in a minute as well. So this is changing. So this whole dive back into the times of 100,000 years, where we are now, it tells me we are at a very critical turning point, okay? If you dive into Kairos theory, this turning point is called bifurcation point. The bifurcation point is a point. You have that system, there is a ball, the ball can either fall back or the ball falls in front, okay? So we have two options. We can leapfrog into the future, we can take Corona, we can take all these tough times of the crisis, and we can learn and leap forward, or we fall back. And you have many things, I think you can see many companies, political systems, wars coming up. You have that reality that you can fall back, okay? But you can also leap forward, okay? And I hopefully can inspire us all, but we are here normally, don't pray to the converted. So you are the ones who know that. So I think it's more important to convince the other people about that. Okay, so where is tourism going? I fundamentally do believe that we are over with the times of incremental steps. So we need a systematic new approach, okay? The small steps things are over. So the question is, what is it? And here I feel the need to dive back with you into the wisdom of nature. The wisdom of nature is 3.8 billion years of wisdom. Trillion years in English, trillion years. So what can we learn from that? Nature is always doing things right. There is no waste in nature, okay? So what can we learn from that? And I want to dive with you into that. I want to dive with you into 7 principles of nature that we can easily, or not easily, but at least should apply to our organizations and our companies, okay? And that's what we can learn from nature. I did it myself. I asked myself, Andreas, what is the way forward? Because I was doing 25 years of sustainability support, and I can tell you I was working on the outside. So I did 500 energy audits with hotels. I was creating, Matthias knows that, I was creating a sustainability profile in the biggest tour operator of Europe, which is TUI. I was doing a lot of on the outside, but honestly, everything I did was for myself on the inside. So I was teaching myself a lot of on the inside. And in Corona times, I realized, well, the outside is connected to the inside, and we should go inward to change the outward. I was doing all these energy consultancies, and I realized once I did that with a hotel, half a year it was back again, half a year it was over. So I didn't come to the point, I couldn't come to a new attitude. I just changed the energy system, which is great, because the energy system is 30% of all the emissions that a hotel is doing, okay? So let's dive into the principles, and that principles are leading us to the inside. I'll really question, what is the inside? The rule number one of life is life affirming. So life always creates new optimism, or like really a new life to strive, okay? That's a very hard rule. What does it mean for our business, for example? It means that we should avoid everything that is toxic. And you have a feeling, if you work in a company or if you study or what you do, you have a feeling about toxic relation. We talked about this energy vampires. You know the energy vampires in your life that always suck out your energy, and after that you feel like, my dear, this is less energy. So that's interesting, and I will dive with you into that. So what does it mean life really creates life? It means we have to create a new way of accounting. This is German, but I think you get it. It's true cost accounting, because if you measure what you are doing according to normal business, I mean, we compare ourselves to normal business, but the normal business, normally, if you have emissions, you create change in the life of the habitat. You kill some animals, you create worse health, and someone has to pay for that. But you don't pay with a price for it. So true cost accounting is about, if you have if you eat a steak, normally this should be 200% more expensive if you include all that costs of the health system and everything. So we need to come to a new way of accounting, and really the new way of accounting includes all that external costs. The other way around is also true. If you do good for the world, for example, if you use only biological farmers who create the soil that can capture CO2, you should pay these farmers to do that. It's a system that you're paying for, okay? So this is a new way of looking at that, and they are working on that also in the European Union. They are changing these accounting rules, and you should be aware of that, because if you do accounting, the next time it's about true cost accounting in the next 5 to 10 years, really taking into account all the burdens that we are doing. And there are a lot of things you can think about. I mean, here are some of the things you can think about, and it's not only about the things you might think about. It's not only about the ecological impact. It's also about human toxicity. If you have a colleague that is burdening everyone, this is toxic, and you get a depression because of him. Normally, someone should pay for that. If you have gender pay gap, there is a gender pay gap between the female and the males. So what about that? That's also something that is changing our lives. So we should pay for that in a way. Child labor, we should pay for all those. If we don't do, those are of advantage that they harm the environment. So I think this is something we should think about. And there are some people that think about that. There are some things some companies that join forces to think about that, okay? I like that very much. So if life confirms life, basically it's about how can we ensure that we are not doing toxic things. Okay, and here again, I'm just saying that this will be the new normal, okay? I'm not saying that's something that Andreas is inventing here. It's something that will be the new normal. And I'm doing it with some other people in the room for quite some long time, and I was very frustrated that all the people I coached to become sustainable ambassadors are finally having a harder time on the market because they pay more. What a bullshit, okay? So this is hopefully changing now. We have to change the playing rules of the whole playing field, okay? If we don't change the playing game, the rules of the game, that's not going somewhere, I believe. So what we can take from that, if you are a business or if you're doing things, these are the things that I can really give to you as my advice. How can we ensure as an organization that we create more life? And I mean it really, how can we create more life? Okay? True cost accounting or common goods balance. Does anyone know what a common goods balance is? Then I should explain that. Okay. A common goods balance looks like that. There was a guy in Austria, Christian Felber, who said, why do we have values in our constitution? Solidarity, social justice, human dignity, environmental sustainability, transparency. These are the normal values in most of the constitution of the world. What about the values that you have in your families? Quite close, huh? Respect. These are the. But I ask you, are these the values of our companies, of our tourism companies in general? That's a question. So he put out a matrix, said, okay, if these are the values in our constitution and we should live according to our constitution, what do we do then? We have then on the left side here the stakeholders, the suppliers, the owners, the employees, the customers, and the social environment, so your community. And then he put up the matrix to say, okay, for every field, we should have indicators. I just did it for my own company. It is very interesting. How do you ensure human dignity with your employees? Big question, huh? But it's interesting if you dive into that. And I got only 250 of 1,000 points. So I have a lot of room to improve that, okay? Just as an impulse. Second, life is constantly changing and responsive. That's something that we are very used to in life. So just for you to understand, I'm a biologist. We are made of 30 trillion cells and 30 plus trillion microbes. We are not a fixed entity. You are all not a fixed entity. So in every 7 years, you're totally new because every cell in yourself is new. So you are set up in a totally new way. So life is always responsive, always changing, okay? If that is the case, we might misunderstand Charles Darwin. As I'm a biologist, Charles Darwin, you know, the father of evolutionary theory, he said, well, everyone understands only the strongest will survive. No, it's not the strongest. It's not the most intelligent. It's the most adaptive one, who can adapt the fastest to the new conditions. And look out, these conditions are changing, very dynamic. So we need to be very adaptive to that. And we can either resist that change, and believe me, I'm a consultancy. I went into Corona and I had hell of a lot of fear. I said, this is over now. For the first time, my business is over. I won't have business anymore. But then I realized, okay, I can have two positions. I can be afraid, I can go away and resist change, or I can see it as a source of creativity. This is how life is looking at all the challenges, source of creativity. So I said, well, I can do digital courses. Now half of my income is digital courses. Because I sat back and said, what can I do? Okay. So basically, interestingly, if you look at that principle, the ants are a very good model. Or you can also take the bees. They are all self-organizing, small little units. It's not the king or the queen of a bee colony that says, you have to do that. They are small little self-organizing units, okay? They are always changing, checking the environment, pheromones, smelling everything, and they are reacting to that, okay? So that's interesting. So what could that mean? I looked at some example because I wanted to make it very down to earth. So there's a company, Next Jump. What they do is every morning they meet with two in the company. So two people in the company, like you two in your company, meeting every morning, and you say, well, I'm coming from home and I have this problem with my child. So the first half an hour was about what is the problem at home? And then the next half an hour is how can we support each other on our jobs? So these are, companies are playing with it. They are meeting, and after 1 week they are meeting with a coach and two couples, okay? And the end of the month they are meeting with 10 people. So this is reality. So how can you increase this kind of feeling in your company? And that is really asking you this principle, how can you be more creative? What is your creativity out of that crisis? Because believe me or not, I mean, you know that we will have multiple crises in the future. So that's reality. How can we promote self-organization issues? Huh? How can we protect our employees from stress and burnout? What can you do for them to care for them? These are the big questions related to that topic. Life principle number 3. Life is made up of relationships and cooperation. Okay? That's always what life is doing. And if you look at nature, nature is never a question of parts. It's always a question of togetherness, okay? If you look at the forest like this, basically you know that the mycelium, like down in the earth, it connects all trees, and they communicate. If there is a predator coming in, they all communicate. Trees are really good at communicating with each other, okay? So that's a question. What is togetherness? And what we did in the Middle Age is, Descartes, for example, he said we need to build it into parts to understand the logic of life. That was helping us to get here, but it doesn't help us to get into the future, okay? So that's an interesting question. So in nature, this is true. The extent of living systems thrive. If a system thrives, it depends on all the extent of the interconnected relationships. What does this mean for tourism? It's not about numbers anymore. It's about relationships. Numbers are after relationships. Does numbers serve us or we the numbers? That's a big question. And it's all about relationships, okay? It's not about numbers. Numbers are coming when your relationships flourish. If you have good connections to your customers, to your suppliers, to your inhabitants of your region, to the people who give you money, then your system flourishes. That's the logic, okay? So what that does mean? For me, I came up with a totally new model of defining sustainability for me. It starts with ourselves. I talked with you about that. How do you get healthy? Then it dives into your colleagues. How do you create healthy environments with your colleagues? Then it dives with you into suppliers and into customers. And then finally, if you do all that well, you are talking about a good relationship to your planet or to our planet, okay? So these are the waves. And it's for me like you put a stone into a lake and then it ripples off, okay? That's how it does. So the future is more about connecting. And if you ask me right now, I'm Andreas, what is sustainability? I will never talk about, well, these are the 3 triple bottom lines about social justice and ecological and economy. This is boring for me. It's like this for me. It's a new definition of quality. It's about quality is a positive relationship of everything. Your relationship with your world, with your people, with your suppliers, with everyone, okay? So employees, if you do that, they are not resources. They are ambassadors of what you are doing, okay? And actually, suppliers help you to co-create authentic experiences. So you can create that together. I was, for example, doing a project on Crete, and we took the people from the hotels onto the farms, and we trained the hotels on the farms together with the farmers. So they got the values of the farmers, and we took the farmers into the hotels because the farmers learned a lot in the hotels. They learned, what about hygienic aspects? What about marketing aspects? And the hotel people learned, where do my products come from? Okay, that was very interesting. So change that sides. Go to your suppliers and change that sides. That's very interesting, okay? So that's another one. And the other one is, that's a normal definition. Products serve our guests, locals, and our planet, okay? And the last point, often we forget about the last point. The last point is about open source. Whenever you do something good, you're laughing, Martha, but normally in tourism, we are very competitive. We found something, I realized that something in my coaching, they found something, oh great, we did that. And then let's keep it for myself. But that's not about sustainability. It's about open source. How can you give to the world? And my last principle will be about that. If you give to the world, it comes back to you, but somewhere else. One story of my life is, Dagmar knows that story. I created an NGO in Germany, and this NGO about sustainable tourism is now the biggest NGO about sustainable tourism in Germany. And I created it, I didn't know, but I felt like I needed to do that. I was reporting, Matthias knows it, I was reporting to the CEO of TUI, and I said, I want to create an NGO. We all need to work together. And he said, well, Andreas, that's okay, it's my last year, do it. So I did it, I founded that NGO, and I was pushed on a stage like this, together with all the CEOs, all the big, like here in Spain, all the big CEOs of all the touristic companies, the small little Andreas standing there. I have a dream. I want you all work together. And the first was the reaction of a big other NGO, another tour operator, Thomas Cook. It was died meanwhile. He said, I love this idea. I will join you in half a year, but the first you get all the promotion for yourself as TUI because you founded it. So now it's becoming big. So I really think we should share that, what we are doing and what we have accomplished. Here's another example. It's a bank. I used the example from other people, okay? Here's a bank that 3 times a year they are connecting people, they're bringing people to nature and ask themselves, what is your purpose in life? And how does this purpose in your life relate to the purpose of our company? And if you match these two, you have a purpose in life and you want to have a purpose in your company. That's it. That's magic. That's where the magic happens, okay? That's why they are doing it. They are not doing it to be nice. They're doing it to really align their purposes, okay? So what about those? Do you do open source thinking? Do you do hackathons with your people? Do you, for example, follow the example of eco-villages? Does someone of you know eco-villages? Martha knows it, of course. Anyone else knows eco? Of course, Magma knows it. Eco-villages are places in the world where the future is tested. 12,000 villages in the world test the future. They live together, and then they have one purpose: to design a new way of living. For example, in Germany, we have one that created a building that doesn't use energy. No external energy, no external water. It's self-sufficient. And what they do is they share this experience with every of that 12,000 eco-villages. So my dream sometimes is, what about if a hotel, if a destination finds out something and then shares what they found with the rest of the world? Open source thinking. That would be fantastic. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, but it's not happening. Tourism is very competitive in my way of thinking. The fourth number is really diversity is vital. From tension into energy or synergy. So let's dive into that. Here, blue economy, blue tourism. Where the island meets the water, like in mangroves, biodiversity is highest, okay? So there you have a lot of biodiversity. So what does it mean for our companies? It means where you have tension, that's good. Because no tension, no aliveness, no learning, no evolution. Sometimes you put the tension away. You know that there are some people that really, they kick your ass every day in your companies. And you say, it's really hard. But if you cope with these people, they are designing the new future. So this is a law of life. Tension is important. Where tension is between land and water, there is vitality, okay? So the interesting thing here is you can really work with it. I have an example here from CVB. That's an IT service company that actually said the people that are most irritating, we make them ambassadors of our company. Fantastic. So they are reporting to the board. So they really value this irritation. So my question to you is, how do you hire people? How do you promote diversity? Are the leaders in your company trained to cope with tensions? And how do you deal with employees that are a pain in the ass? It could be. You're laughing, but you know that there are some employees that are a pain in the ass. And so it's interesting how you deal with those. And sometimes you want to kick them out, that this is against our culture. No, the opposite is true. It helps you to stay competitive, and it leads you into the future. So the next is, life is cyclical and seasonal. And I want to ask you, first, I like this way of thinking. In life, breakdown and breakthrough is very much related. If you break down, breakthrough is close. Life tells you, if something breaks down, it means this is the first version that is coming to a breakthrough, okay? So that's the way you could look at it differently. If something breaks down, if something stresses, if something is irritating, it's very close to a breakthrough, okay? That's what life teaches us. And we often feel like if something breaks down, we have a tendency to quickly get out of that. But it's much more important if something breaks down, like a relationship in your life or your relationship with your job. It's much more important to ask yourself, what happens here? What can I learn out of that? That is what makes you truly authentic. So when I broke down with my business, I really asked myself, what can I do? Or when I broke down with my big turburator, I asked myself, what is my contribution to the world? And then I founded an NGO. So what can you do when you break down? Take an easy step back and reflect on that. So this is what nature is doing. And another example here is really, there are, for example, nurses in the Netherlands. And you know, nurses, if you talk to nurses, they really want to serve people, okay? So basically, they felt we are overshadowed by bureaucracy. And you know that. Sometimes we are all overshadowed by bureaucracy. So what they did is, well, the first group said, we need 10 to 12 nurses working together and supporting each other. And they did it, this first team. And now this is the biggest organization in the Netherlands. It's Burst Talk. They are now 15,000 employees. They have a 8% instead of 25% of overhead. So small little units sometimes are very interesting. There is another example here when you think about that. There is a beer company, this one, that uses, for example, beer made of bread. They use bread to digest, and then it's like a cyclical element. So you should really ask yourself, what companies do you support with your energy of suppliers that really you can support? There are another example of that. You know that leather is not very good. Here you have leather made of fish. Fish, I mean, the skin of a fish is normally waste, but it could also be very nice dinked skins for tannery shops and so on. So we need to rethink the way we are doing it. And my question to you is, where are you? Are you, when you think about that, in the renewal phase, in the piloting phase, which is spring? Are you in the growth phase, in the success phase, which is summer? Are you in the harvest retreat phase, which is autumn? Or are you in the reflection phase? We are now in this hemisphere, we are now entering into the reflection phase. So wintering is very normal for any kind of things in the nature. But do we allow ourselves to do wintering? Do we allow ourselves to get 3 months off and reflect our life? I ask you, do you do that? It's not always possible, huh? But sometimes it is, it should be. Whenever I did that, I invented my life. So I really think this is very interesting, because the radical innovations in nature always take place from winter to spring. The small adjustments take place from spring into summer, okay? So what is your reflection about radical innovation? Maybe you focus on guests, but maybe you in the future focus on employees. How can you strengthen employees? Do you feel prepared for these dynamic changes? These are all the questions from nature to you. Number 6, life is in a flow. And this is a very interesting one, because what you can do with your companies, with your organizations, also, by the way, with this event here, you can ask yourself, what is the flow of information? What is the resources? What is the relational energy? What is the meaning and the purpose of this whole event or your organizations? If you do that, you normally do that. Internal stakeholders, what are your departments, managerial staff, team, mission, stress level, for example. You can put everything on the internal side, on one side, and on the other side you put the external things. Customers, suppliers, investors, competitors, advisors, media. And you can ask yourself, what are the strong parts? You can ask yourself this 3 questions. Which kind of relationships is strengthening me? Do I have a good relationship to my team? Do I have a good relationship to my mission, to my culture? What is actually stressing me a bit, and I should think about it, and what is actually really stressing me a lot, and I should think about that. So this is normally a map, what we do when we think about regenerative leadership. We do a map, an eco-map of that. One other example here, Tony's Chocolonely. What they do is they did that eco-mapping, and then they focused on supply chain, medias, and customers, okay? And they have a very clear mission on that. They put it on every chocolate. So this is something very interesting what you can think about. So what is the most efficient lever for you for liveliness? What is a systematic way of coaching? We sometimes do coaching one thing, but it's a systematic way of coaching. And what is your highest mission in life? For me, the highest mission of tourism is we can be the best change maker for the world, because 10% of all people are working in tourism. 10% of all GDP is made in tourism. So we can actually change the world through a better tourism. That is my highest mission for tourism. So life is a cohesive whole. That's my last point for this after lunch session with you. And this is really about something that was invented 100 years ago. Schrödinger, you might have known the Schrödinger's cat. It's a live or dead cat. And Einstein, they have found that 100 years ago, that everything is energy, everything is connected. So if you do good things on the one side, they might not come back from this side. If you do good things for employees, I realized they come back from this side. I had a lady at the airport. You know that I was helping this lady, and I stayed with this lady for half an hour, and I felt I could do that. And I know that somewhere else this energy comes back to me. And the interesting thing is, the shamanic people, like the indigenous people, found that already long before the quantum physics. The quantum physics really confirmed that everything is connected, okay? So let's think about this last 2-3 slides. The way we experience the world is our sums and our feelings. They are creating this world. So sometimes we think we create this with our words. No, we create it with the way we think and the way we feel. If you're coming to me after the stage and say, this is bullshit what you're talking about, Andreas, I can feel that even if you don't talk to me, okay? So let's be aware of the way we think, because the sum of everything we think and feel creates our world. And this is what I always say to people. I said, if you are in this area of concern, there is a war, energy crisis, burnout, you diminish your energy to create a new world, okay? So I'm not watching news anymore, because if I watch the news about the wars in the world, my energy gets down because I cannot do anything. So I only focus on the things I can influence. Now my influence area are you in this room. So can I reach out to you? And can I really transfer my message? This is where I can make a difference, okay? And this is what I try to do always with my job, to create an NGO and make a difference. So the question is, are you in the area of concern, or are you on the area of influence? That's the big question. And the more you are in the area of influence, the more the circle widens. The more you're in the area of concern, it diminishes. Okay, that's logic. And the good news for the end is, it's not 80% we need to change the world. It's only 10-12%. This is what I learned from future theoretical people, like researchers. We only need 10 to 12%. If we have 10%, 12% of people thinking differently, the world changes. It's not 80%, okay? That's a good news for you. So my last wish for you is, success is when the reality is like our imagination. So I wish you a perfect imagination of everything we can do. And if you like a good book for Christmas, Together We Are Better is a very nice book from Simon Sinek. So thanks so much for your time, and it was a pleasure for me to be with you. Thanks.